Like Goliath.
Yeah, yeah. And the whole reason why the Canaanites are a problem is because they're this half-breed.
They had that corrupt DNA.
Right.
In those cultures.
So I almost feel like we're talking about Percy Jackson here. You know, my kids love the Percy Jackson series, which is the half-bloods of the Greek mythology.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so it really seems to be that way, where one of the gods comes down and is with a human being, and then you get a half-blood.
Well, I think that verse, was it Genesis 6:4?
Yeah.
The end of that verse says, they were the mighty men of old, the men of renown.
Yeah.
I believe, it's my personal belief, that the sons of the angels and the daughters of men, they had a corrupt DNA and they were giants. I believe these were the origin of the Titan mythology that the Greeks and all them had, later on, 2,000 or 3,000 years later. The Greeks had the Titans, with Zeus and all of the different gods of their pantheon. I think this is where it came from.
And the Egyptians had a similar thing. Mm-hmm. We even look at what we can know about, you look at North America and South America. They had very similar outlook even across the world when they seemingly had no interaction with each other.
Right.
Yet they still had a similar belief system. So it's really interesting, the flood story, all those exist all over the world and all these different cultures. And so the question is, what in the world is going on here?
And another thing about that age before the flood was it was full of violence. And I don't know, I think it's the book of Jasher that talks about how large these giants were, like, 200 feet tall, of just very large being, not just 15 feet tall. I mean, really big, huge, like a skyscraper high. And that they physically ate men. They wanted the blood they bite their head off and drink the blood. And that's the kind of violence we're talking about in the book of Jasher. It talks about that. Any animals, any men, they wanted the blood. And that could be where the vampire stories come from too. That mythology.
Yeah, there's these just really interesting, crazy things that are going on, which then lead us to the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11.
Now that's after the flood.
And that's after the flood.
So first, God wipes out all the evil except for Noah and his family.
Yes.
And there's 8 people on the ark with all the, 2 by 2 the animals. They went through the flood and they survived, and then they started repopulating the earth. And then a while after that, the repopulation had happened. And then just like with Adam and Eve, and then you had Abel and Cain. Cain killed Abel, and Abel was replaced by Seth. So you got the line of Seth and the line of Cain, and they came down, and evil and good. So then they had the flood, wiped out all the evil and all the good except for that one family.
And so one thing we have to preface is we don't know that all of Seth's line was good, and we don't know that all of Cain's side was bad.
Well, that's true. But we know that Noah was a preacher of righteousness, and that apparently nobody followed him.
Right.
So,
right. And so he's going to come from the line of Seth. And so the line of Seth is going to continue. Something else that we haven't talked about is that Adam to, 7 generations down? Could have known Adam. Mm-hmm. And then so, there's a lot of history that's being able to pass on down because human beings lived for so long up until this point of they were cut down to 120 years.
Right.
So up to that point, there's a lot of history being passed on. And also the reason why so many children were able to populate.
Yeah.
If you're questioning, 2 human beings couldn't populate the whole earth, make different cultures and all those things, you might want to check the study on dogs and find out that 2 dogs could make all the breeds of the dogs that we have today. There's a scientific study on that. So Very interesting.
Okay, so then we had the flood, and Noah and his family repopulate the earth. And I started to talk about how we had the Adam and Seth lines came down. Well, just like that, after the flood, you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the three sons of Noah, who their lines repopulated the earth. And the line of Ham was cursed because right after the flood, Ham, or actually the son of Ham, what was his name?
Well, it says Ham saw his mother's
Oh,
nakedness.
it was a Ham?
Yeah.
Okay.
Saw his father's
but
nakedness.
His son was the one that got cursed.
Yeah, his son's the one that's
So there's
cursed.
kind of interesting thing there. But you got Ham is the bad line, or the cursed line.
Yeah.
And you got Japheth and Shem, that Japheth ended up basically repopulating Europe. Shem was the Middle Eastern people. Then they repopulated the earth. So then, not too long after that, you had Babel.
And so what's going on at Babel is that God had said, go and populate the entire earth. And somehow we have this giant concentration of humanity in this one place in Babel, which today we believe is Iraq. And they're building this tower.
That was that Nimrod and his group that did that, right?
Yeah.
Mainly.
Yeah.
And I believe they're from the sons of Ham, the evil line.
A renowned warrior.
Yes.
He was a hunter. And so you get this kind of idea that he was one of these special creations.
Now, there's a lot of people that believe that he is also the one who the Epic of Gilgamesh is patterned after. And it could be that he was like a giant or a Nephilim.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's Ugaritic. Yeah. But where this becomes important is that the Tower of Babel, which, we could debate why they're doing it, but basically it's not a God purposed reason why they're doing it.
Right.
And so God says, hey, they're doing this, whatever they set their minds to, they're going to do, but it's foolishness. So let's confuse their language and let's make them do what they were created to do. And let's populate the whole earth. Mm-hmm. And so we have this split that takes place.